The slap didn't just sting my cheek. It echoed through the silent ballroom, silencing the string quartet and the chatter of 200 wealthy guests. "You clumsy, jealous little loser!" My sister Victoria stood over me, her face twisted in a mask of rage that clashed horribly with her pristine white engagement gown. Red wine dripped from the hem of her dress onto the marble floor wine that I had spilled because she had subtly stuck her foot out as I walked past with a tray of crystal flutes. I was on my knees surrounded by shattered glass wearing the black uniform of the catering staff. My own sister's engagement party and I wasn't a guest. I was the help. I I didn't mean to, I stammered looking up at her. Behind her stood Ryan, my ex-boyfriend of 3 years, now her fiancé. He looked away, refusing to meet my eyes, spinning the diamond ring on his finger nervously. "Didn't mean to!" Victoria shrieked for the benefit of the crowd. "You did this on purpose. You couldn't stand seeing me happy. You couldn't stand that Ryan chose a real woman instead of a pathetic child like you." She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Security. Get this trash out of my sight. But don't let her leave. I want her to pay for this dress. Lock her in the pantry until the party is over. She can listen to our happiness from the dark where she belongs." Two burly security guards hauled me up. I didn't fight. I let them drag me through the kitchen past the staring chefs and into the cold, damp storage pantry in the back. The heavy metal door slammed shut. The lock clicked. Darkness swallowed me. I slid down against the wall, pulling my knees to my chest. The muffled sound of applause and music filtered through the door. They were probably toasting the happy couple right now. But in the dark, a slow, cold smile spread across my face. Victoria thought she had buried me. She thought she had won. She didn't know that inside my apron pocket my phone held a video that would burn their entire world to the ground. My name is Elena Vance. I am 26 years old. And tonight, my sister isn't just losing a fiancé. She's losing everything. To understand why I was serving champagne at my ex-boyfriend's engagement party, you have to understand Victoria. Victoria was the sun, and everyone else was just kindling for her fire. She was 3 years older, 3 inches taller, and infinitely crueler. Growing up, if I had a toy she liked, she broke it. If I had a friend she liked, she stole them. Ryan was the ultimate prize. We had been dating for 3 years. We were happy. Or so I thought. Ryan was sweet, a bit spineless but kind. He came from money, Sterling money. His father, Arthur Sterling, was a real estate tycoon who owned half the city. I kept Ryan away from Victoria as long as I could. I knew her pattern. But 6 months ago, I brought him to a family dinner. I saw the way Victoria looked at him. Not with love, but with hunger. Like a shark spotting a seal. "So you're the heir to the Sterling Empire," she had purred, ignoring me completely. "That must be burdensome." 2 weeks later, Ryan started canceling dates. "Work," he said. "Family obligations." A month later, he broke up with me via text. "I'm sorry, Elena. I need someone more aligned with my future." The next day, Victoria posted a photo of them together on Instagram. Caption, "Finally found my king." My parents, of course, were thrilled. "Victoria is just more suited for that lifestyle, Elena," my mother had said, patting my hand dismissively. "You're too simple. You would have bored him eventually. Be happy for your sister." Happy. And then came the final insult. Victoria demanded that my catering company, where I worked as an event coordinator, handle the engagement party. And she specifically requested in writing that I be the one to serve the head table. "It will be good for her to see what real love looks like," she had told my boss. Closure. My boss, terrified of losing the Sterling account, forced me to agree. So here I was, locked in a pantry, smelling of onions and floor wax. But Victoria made a mistake. She thought she was the only predator in the room. She didn't know about the hotel. Last week, I was doing a site inspection for a corporate event at the Ritz-Carlton downtown. It was late, the corridors empty. I was about to leave when I saw a familiar figure slipping into the service elevator. Victoria. She was wearing a trench coat and sunglasses, looking around nervously. Curiosity got the better of me. I followed her. She went up to the penthouse suite. But she didn't knock. She used a keycard. I waited in the hallway, heart pounding. 10 minutes later, the door opened, but it wasn't Ryan who walked out with her. It was Arthur Sterling, Ryan's father. He was 55, handsome in a rugged silver fox way, and very married to his reputation. I pulled out my phone and started recording. They stood in the doorway, unaware of me hiding behind a large potted fern. Arthur had his hand on Victoria's waist. "Does he suspect anything?" Arthur asked, his voice low. "Ryan." Victoria laughed, a cruel, mocking sound. "Please, that boy is an idiot. He thinks I'm a virgin who's saving herself for marriage. He's so desperate to please me, it's pathetic." "Good." Arthur smirked. "Marry him, secure the bag. Once you're in the family legally, we can figure out how to get rid of him. And then—" He pulled her close and kissed her. It wasn't a fatherly kiss. It was possessive, hungry. "And then, I'll be the queen of the Sterling Empire," Victoria whispered against his lips, "and I won't have to deal with that boring son of yours anymore." I had lowered my phone, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it. She wasn't just stealing my boyfriend, she was sleeping with his father. She was planning to marry the son to get to the father's fortune. It was depraved. It was disgusting. It was perfect. Back in the pantry, I checked the time on my phone. 8:15 p.m. The speeches were scheduled for 8:30 p.m. I stood up and brushed the dust off my uniform. I wasn't going to stay in here. I looked around the small room. Shelves of canned goods, bags of flour, a mop bucket, and a ventilation duct near the ceiling. It was small, but so was I. I dragged a crate of wine bottles over to the wall. I climbed up, unscrewed the grate with a butter knife I had in my apron, and pulled myself up. It was tight, dark, and dusty. I crawled, counting the turns, visualizing the layout of the mansion. I needed to get to the AV room behind the main stage. As I crawled, I could hear the party below. "And now," the DJ's voice boomed, "let's welcome the father of the groom, Mr. Arthur Sterling, for a toast." I crawled faster. Below me, Arthur was speaking. "When I look at Victoria, I see a woman of exceptional taste, a woman who knows what she wants." The crowd laughed politely. "Ryan is a lucky man," Arthur continued, "to find a woman who loves him for him." I reached the vent cover above the AV room. I peered down. The room was empty. The technician was likely out getting a drink or watching the speeches. I kicked the grate. It clattered to the floor. I dropped down, landing in a crouch. I was in. I rushed to the main console. It was a sophisticated setup controlling the massive LED screen behind the stage, the sound system, the lights. On the screen, a slideshow of Ryan and Victoria was playing. Photos of them on yachts in Paris, looking perfect and fake. I pulled the USB drive from my pocket. My hands were steady now. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. I plugged the drive into the main port. A dialog box popped up on the control screen. "Device detected. Media files found." I selected the file named thetruth.mp4. I hovered my finger over the Override Main Screen button. Through the glass window of the AV booth, I could see the ballroom. Victoria was standing next to Ryan, looking radiant and triumphant. She was holding his hand, but her eyes were scanning the room, calculating, assessing. She leaned over and whispered something to her mother. My mother. They both laughed. Probably a joke about me rotting in the pantry. Ryan looked happy, oblivious, like a lamb being led to slaughter. "I'm sorry, Ryan," I whispered. "This is going to hurt, but it's better than the alternative." The DJ announced, "And now a special video presentation from the bride showcasing their love story." Victoria clapped her hands in delight. "Oh, I didn't know about this. Did you do this, Ryan?" Ryan shook his head, smiling. "Maybe it's a surprise from your sister." "Oh wait, she's indisposed." The crowd chuckled. "Well," Victoria beamed, "let's watch." I smiled. "Yes, Victoria, let's watch." I pressed the button. The massive LED screen behind the stage flickered. The soft, romantic music faded out, replaced by a sharp hiss of static. The crowd quieted, expecting a technical glitch or a transition to another sappy montage of Victoria and Ryan holding hands on a beach. Victoria smiled expectantly, tilting her head. "Is this the part where we see the proposal again?" Then the image stabilized. It wasn't a beach. It wasn't a yacht. It was a dimly lit hotel hallway. The timestamp in the corner read, October 14th, 11:42 p.m. A door opened. Two figures stepped out. The camera zoomed in, slightly shaking just enough to show it was being held by a human hand, not a tripod. The first figure was unmistakable. Victoria. She was wearing a trench coat, but it was open, revealing lingerie underneath. Her hair was messy, her lipstick smeared. The second figure stepped into the light. Arthur Sterling. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the ballroom. It was a sound I had never heard before, a mixture of shock, horror, and instant realization. On screen, Arthur pulled Victoria close. The audio, crisp and amplified by the $1 million sound system, boomed through the hall. Does he suspect anything? Arthur's voice was deep, recognizable. Ryan. Victoria's laugh on the screen was cruel, a cackle that seemed to bounce off the walls of the silent ballroom. Please, that boy is an idiot. He thinks I'm a virgin who's saving herself for marriage. He's so desperate to please me, it's pathetic. In the ballroom, Ryan dropped his champagne glass. It shattered, but no one looked. All eyes were glued to the screen. Victoria stood frozen, her face draining of color until she looked like a wax statue. She stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing soundlessly. Arthur, standing at the head table just a few feet away, looked like he had been shot. He gripped the tablecloth, his knuckles white. The video continued. Good, Arthur said on screen. Marry him, secure the bag. Once you're in the family legally, we can figure out how to get rid of him. The crowd erupted. Someone screamed. A glass was thrown. And then, I'll be the queen of the Sterling Empire. Victoria purred on screen, kissing Arthur deeply. And I won't have to deal with that boring son of yours anymore. The screen went black. For 3 seconds there was absolute silence. Then Ryan screamed. It was a primal sound full of betrayal and rage. He spun around to face his father. You! Ryan choked out, pointing a shaking finger at Arthur. You! And her? Arthur tried to stammer to find a lie, but the evidence had been projected in 4K resolution to 300 of his closest friends and business rivals. Ryan. Son. It's a deepfake AI. Someone is trying to destroy us. Don't lie to me, Ryan roared. He grabbed the tablecloth of the head table and yanked it. Crystal china and expensive floral arrangements crashed to the floor in a chaotic avalanche. Victoria finally found her voice. She rushed toward Ryan, grabbing his arm. Baby Ryan, listen to me, it's Elena. She did this. She's jealous. She edited it. Ryan looked at her. Really looked at her for the first time. He saw the woman who had claimed to be pure, who had claimed to love him for his soul, not his money. Get off me, he hissed, shoving her away. She stumbled back in her heels, tripping over the spilled wine from earlier. You called me an idiot, Ryan said, his voice trembling, to my father, while you were with him. I was drunk, I didn't mean it. Victoria sobbed, reaching for him again. I love you, Ryan. You love the Empire, Ryan shouted. You said it yourself. Suddenly, the doors to the ballroom burst open. Everyone turned, expecting security. Instead, a man walked in. He was tall, dressed in a tuxedo that fit him like a second skin, and he radiated a kind of dangerous calm. Julian Thorne, the CEO of Thorne Industries, the biggest rival to the Sterling Empire, and technically my boss. Behind him walked me. I had ditched the catering uniform. I was wearing a dress I had found in the AV room's closet, probably left by a performer from a previous event. It was a shimmering emerald green gown that hugged every curve. My hair was down wild and free. Elena, my mother gasped from her table. How did you? I let her out, Julian announced, his voice carrying easily over the murmurs. He walked up the center aisle, me by his side. Because unlike this family, I don't believe in locking people in pantries. Victoria's eyes narrowed. You helped her. This is corporate sabotage, I'll sue you. Julian laughed. It was a rich, dark sound. Sabotage, Victoria, you did this to yourself. Elena just turned on the lights. I stepped forward, leaving Julian's side. I walked right up to the stage, navigating the broken glass and spilled food. I looked Victoria in the eye. You wanted a show, Victoria, I said calmly. You wanted everyone to see what real love looks like. Well, here it is. You ruined my life, Victoria shrieked, lunging at me. But before she could touch me, Ryan stepped in between us. He didn't push her. He just stood there, a wall of hurt and anger. Don't touch her, Ryan said. Ryan. Victoria looked at him confused. She's the enemy. She humiliated us. She told me the truth, Ryan said. He turned to me. Elena. Don't. I cut him off. Don't apologize, Ryan. You made your choice 6 months ago. You chose the flash. You chose the lies. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. I turned to Arthur Sterling. The great tycoon was slumped in his chair, looking old and defeated. His reputation was in tatters. Mr. Sterling, I said, I believe this belongs to you. I pulled a small velvet box from my purse, the one I had retrieved from the AV room where Victoria had hidden her emergency stash. I tossed it onto the table. It slid across the wood and stopped in front of him. He opened it. Inside was a positive pregnancy test. Victoria told Ryan she was pregnant, I announced to the room. That's why he proposed so quickly. Isn't that right, Ryan? Ryan nodded, looking sick. She said it was a miracle. It is a miracle, I said. Because Victoria had her tubes tied 3 years ago. I drove her to the clinic. The room gasped again. This was the final nail. Victoria looked around wildly. That's a lie, I reversed it, We can call Dr. Eris, I challenged. Or we can look at the date on that test. It's expired, Victoria. You bought it online. It's a prop. Victoria collapsed. She fell to her knees in the wreckage of her wedding, sobbing. Not tears of remorse, but tears of a narcissist who had lost control. My mother stood up. She walked over to Victoria. I thought for a second she might comfort her. Instead, my mother looked at Victoria with pure disgust. You embarrassed us. You embarrassed the family. Mom, Victoria wailed, help me. You're on your own, my mother said coldly. We backed you because we thought you were smart. We thought you were winning. But you're just a fool. She turned to leave, signaling my father to follow. They didn't even look at me. They were cutting their losses. Wait. Julian's voice stopped them. He walked up to the stage, standing next to me. He put a hand on the small of my back. It felt warm, protective. Mr. and Mrs. Vance, Julian said. You might want to stay. There's one more thing. He turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for crashing the party, but since the engagement is clearly off, I have a business proposal. Arthur looked up, his eyes narrowing. What do you want, Thorne? I want to buy the Sterling Plaza, Julian said. The downtown project. I know you leveraged it to pay for this wedding, and to pay for Victoria's allowance. Arthur went pale. That's private information. Not when your fiancée leaves her bank statements lying around the hotel room, I added. She spent $200,000 of your money last month alone. On clothes, on jewelry, on a down payment for a secret apartment in Paris. Arthur looked at Victoria. Paris. Victoria looked down. So, Julian continued, I'm offering to buy the plaza, cash. Tonight. It will save you from bankruptcy. But there's a condition. What condition? Arthur asked, defeated. You publicly apologize to Elena, Julian said, and you admit on record that you coerced her employer to send her here as staff. Arthur hesitated. He looked at the crowd. He looked at his ruining son. He looked at the ruins of his life. Fine, Arthur spat. I apologize, Elena. I'm sorry. And, Julian pressed, and I forced the catering company to send her. It was Victoria's idea. She wanted to humiliate her. Thank you. Julian smiled. Consider the deal signed. Julian turned to me. Ready to go? One last thing, I said. I walked over to Victoria, who was still on the floor. I crouched down so we were eye level. Her mascara was running, her dress ruined. You called me a loser, I whispered. You said I was simple. But Victoria, simple people tell the truth. and the truth always wins. I stood up. Goodbye, sister. I took Julian's arm. We walked down the center aisle past the stunned guests, past Ryan, who was watching me with a look of utter regret, past my parents, who stood there like statues of shame. As we reached the doors, I heard Ryan shouting, "Get out!" He was screaming at Victoria, "Get out of my house! Get out of my life!" We stepped out into the cool night air. The valet brought Julian's car around a sleek black Aston Martin. He opened the door for me. "You are amazing in there," he said, his eyes twinkling. I was terrified. I admitted, sinking into the leather seat. "You didn't look it," he said. "You looked like a queen." He got in the driver's side and started the engine. "So, you're single now. Officially." I laughed, a sound of pure relief. "Very single." "Good," Julian said, shifting gears. "Because I've been trying to find a way to ask you out for 6 months, but I have a strict no dating employees policy." "Oh," I raised an eyebrow. "So what changed?" "I fired you." He grinned. "You fired me." "Effective immediately," he said. "You're too good for catering. I'm hiring you as a consultant. For a special project." "What project?" "Rebuilding the Sterling Plaza," he said. "I need someone who knows their secrets. Someone who knows where the bodies are buried." I looked back at the mansion as we drove away. Lights were going out. The party was over. "I know where all the bodies are," I said, and I brought a shovel. But the story didn't end there. The next morning, the video went viral. Someone had live-streamed the entire confrontation. It was everywhere. Engagement party fail was trending worldwide. Victoria tried to spin it. She posted a tearful video claiming the footage was edited, that Arthur had groomed her, that she was a victim. But the internet is a cruel judge. People found the receipts. They found her old posts bragging about her sugar daddy. They found the registry where she had asked for a $10,000 espresso machine. She was roasted. Mercilessly. Ryan filed for a restraining order against her and his father. He sued Arthur for breach of fiduciary duty regarding his trust fund, which Arthur had dipped into to pay for Victoria's gifts. The Sterling empire crumbled from the inside out. Arthur was forced to step down as CEO by the board. He retired in disgrace to a small condo in Florida alone. Victoria. She was blacklisted. No rich man would touch her. No event planner would hire her. She had to move back in with our parents. And that was a punishment worse than prison. My mother, humiliated by the loss of her social standing, turned her criticism onto Victoria full force. I heard from a cousin that they scream at each other day and night, a hell of their own making. As for me, I took the job with Julian. We turned the Sterling Plaza into a mixed-use space for art and affordable housing. It became the crown jewel of the city. And 6 months later, Julian took me back to the Ritz-Carlton, to the rooftop. "No cameras this time," he said, holding my hand. "No secrets?" I agreed. He kissed me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a competition. I didn't feel like a runner-up. I felt like I had won. But there was one loose thread. One thing that gnawed at me. Ryan. He had reached out a few times. Apologetic texts. Drunk voicemails. I had ignored them all. Until one night he showed up at my new apartment. He looked different. Gone were the tailored suits and the arrogant posture. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt. He looked tired. "Elena," he said when I opened the door. "I'm not here to ask for you back. I know I blew that. I wanted to give you this." He handed me a large envelope. "What is it?" "It's the deed," he said. "To the lake house, the one your grandmother loved, the one my dad bought out from under your family 10 years ago." I froze. My grandmother's house. I had loved that place. "Why?" I asked. "Because it was wrong," Ryan said. "My family. We took everything. I want to start giving things back. I'm selling my shares. I'm leaving the city. I'm going to teach. History. Like I always wanted." He looked at me with sad, clear eyes. "You were right, Elena. Simple people tell the truth. I want to be simple." I took the envelope. "Thank you, Ryan." "Be happy," he said. And he walked away. I watched him go. I didn't love him anymore. That part of me had died in the pantry. But I forgave him. And that was the final lock falling off the door. I walked back inside. Julian was in the kitchen making pasta. He looked up and smiled. "Who was that?" "Just a ghost," I said, putting the deed on the counter. "He's gone now." Julian poured 2 glasses of wine. "To ghosts." "To the future," I corrected. We clinked glasses. The next day I drove to the lake house. It was dusty, overgrown, but still standing. I walked through the rooms smelling the old wood and memories. I found a loose floorboard in the attic. My secret hiding spot from when I was a kid. I pried it open. Inside was a small tin box. I opened it. It contained a photo of me and Victoria when we were 5 and 8. We were hugging, smiling, before the jealousy, before the money, before the world broke us. I looked at the photo for a long time. Then I put it back in the box. I put the box back in the hole. And I nailed the floorboard shut. Some memories are worth keeping, but some you have to bury to build a new floor to stand on. I walked out onto the porch. The sun was setting over the water. It was quiet, peaceful. My phone buzzed, a notification from Instagram. Victoria had posted a new photo, a selfie in a bathroom mirror. Caption: "New beginnings. Phoenix rising, Kashak single life." She was wearing a knockoff Chanel necklace, and in the background you could see my mother yelling at her. I smiled. I blocked her. I put my phone down. I was Elena Vance. I was the girl who escaped the pantry. And I was finally, truly free. Phoenix rising. I stared at the blocked profile on my screen one last time before setting the phone down on the dusty porch railing. The irony was suffocating. Victoria wasn't rising. She was just rearranging the ashes. But while she was posting selfies, Julian and I were dealing with the real debris of the Sterling explosion. The legal fallout was catastrophic. It wasn't just a canceled wedding, it was a corporate dismantling. Ryan, true to his word, had initiated a forensic audit of Sterling Enterprises before selling his shares. What they found was a labyrinth of shell companies' tax evasion and consulting fees paid to Victoria that amounted to embezzlement. Arthur Sterling was indicted 3 weeks later. The man who once shook hands with presidents was now shaking hands with a public defender because his assets were frozen. Victoria was named as a co-conspirator. "She's calling you again," Julian said, walking out onto the porch with 2 mugs of coffee. The steam rose in the cool evening air. "My mother." "No, Victoria's lawyer." I sighed, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic. "What do they want now?" "A character reference." Julian chuckled darkly. "They want you to testify that Victoria was under duress and manipulated by Arthur. They're trying to paint her as a naive victim of a powerful man." "Naive?" I laughed, a bitter sound. She was the one checking the stock prices while in bed with him. She was the one who planned the hostile takeover of his son's heart. "So what do we tell them?" "Tell them," I said, looking out at the lake, "that I will testify. But I won't lie. I'll tell the jury exactly what I saw in that hotel hallway. I'll tell them she wasn't a victim. She was an accomplice." The trial was 6 months later. It was the spectacle of the year. I sat on the witness stand dressed in a simple navy suit. Victoria sat at the defense table. She looked haggard. The stress had aged her 10 years. Her hair was dull, her roots showing. When she looked at me, there was no fire left, only a desperate pleading. "Please," her eyes seemed to say. "Save me." But I looked away. I looked at the jury. "Ms. Vance," the prosecutor asked, "did your sister ever express fear of Mr. Sterling?" "No," I said clearly. "She expressed ambition. She told me once that love was a poverty mindset. She said she wanted to be a queen." "And the pregnancy?" "A fabrication," I said. "A strategic move to accelerate the wedding timeline before the fiscal quarter ended. She needed access to the marital assets to pay off her own gambling debts." That was the new discovery. Victoria hadn't just spent money on clothes. She had a gambling problem. Online poker. She had lost nearly $100,000 money she had stolen from my parents' retirement fund. My parents were in the gallery. My mother was weeping silently. My father looked at the floor. They had lost their retirement, their reputation, and their golden child. And they had no one to blame but themselves for enabling her. When I stepped down from the stand, my father tried to catch my eye. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." I didn't mouth anything back. Sorry didn't put the money back in the bank. Sorry didn't undo years of neglect. Victoria was sentenced to 5 years for fraud and conspiracy. Arthur got 12. The Sterling Empire was broken up and sold off. Julian bought the flagship tower as promised, but he renamed it the Phoenix Tower. A real rising. Life settled into a new rhythm. Julian and I worked hard. We didn't just rebuild the tower, we reimagined it. We turned the empty office floors into incubators for small businesses, catering companies, graphic designers, artists, people like me who had talent, but no backing. One rainy Tuesday, a woman came into my office. She looked familiar, but I couldn't place her. She was older, maybe 60, wearing a worn coat. "Elena Vance?" she asked. "Yes." "I'm Martha," she said. "I used to be the housekeeper for the Sterlings. Before everything." "Oh." I stood up. "Please sit down. Can I get you anything?" "No, dear, I have something for you. From Ryan." Ryan. I hadn't heard from him since he gave me the deed. He had moved to a small town in Vermont to teach. "He found this," Martha said, pulling a small leather-bound journal from her bag. "In the attic of the Sterling mansion before the bank foreclosed. It belonged to your grandmother." My heart stopped. My grandmother. Yes. Apparently Arthur Sterling kept it. He took it when he seized the lake house all those years ago. I took the journal with trembling hands. It smelled of lavender and old paper. I opened it. The handwriting was unmistakably hers. My grandmother Rose. I flipped through the pages. Recipes, gardening tips, observations about the weather. And then towards the end, an entry dated 2 days before she died. "Arthur Sterling came by today. He offered to buy the land." I told him no. "This land is for Elena. She has the soul of this place. Victoria has the hunger, but Elena has the roots." He threatened me. He said he would find a way. He said taxes can be manipulated, liens can be manufactured. If I lose this house, Elena know this. The house is just wood. The land is just dirt. Your home is inside you. Don't let them take that. I started to cry. Hot, silent tears that fell onto the yellowed pages. She knew. She knew they were coming for it, and she fought for me until the end. "Thank you, Martha," I whispered. "This means everything." "Ryan wanted you to have it," Martha said, standing up. He said he's sorry he didn't find it sooner. He's a good boy, Elena. He just got lost for a while." "I know," I said. Tell him I'm glad he found his way back." That weekend, Julian and I went back to the lake house. We sat on the dock, our feet dangling in the water. I read him the journal entry. "She was right," Julian said, putting his arm around me. "You do have the roots." "I want to do something," I said, looking at the overgrown garden. "I want to restore it. Not flip it. Not modernize it. Restore it. To exactly how it was when she was alive." "I know a guy," Julian smiled. "He's pretty good with construction. Owns a big company." I laughed. "I think I can afford him." We spent the next year bringing the lake house back to life. We painted it yellow just like she had it. We planted hydrangeas. We fixed the squeaky step on the porch, but we left the height marks on the doorframe, mine and Victoria's. It was a reminder that we were once just children, that the monster wasn't born. It was made. One afternoon, a letter arrived with a prison return address. I almost threw it away, but curiosity, or maybe closure, made me open it. "Elena, I hate the food here. It's carbs on carbs. My skin looks terrible. I guess you're happy now. You won. You got the guy, the money, the house. You always were the lucky one. Mom visits sometimes. She just cries and complains about how small her apartment is. Dad never comes. He blames me for everything. I have a lot of time to think in here. Mostly I think about how unfair it is, but sometimes I think about that day in the pantry, when I locked you in. I was jealous, not of Ryan. I never really loved him. I was jealous that you were content. You were serving champagne to rich snobs and you were still you. I was wearing a $10,000 dress and I felt empty. I don't expect you to write back. I just wanted to say, you were right. Simple people tell the truth. I wish I knew how to be simple. V. I folded the letter. It wasn't an apology. Victoria wasn't capable of a true apology yet. But it was an admission, and that was enough. I didn't write back. I put the letter in a box along with the old photo of us. I put the box on a high shelf in the closet. Maybe one day when she got out we could have coffee. Maybe. But not today. 3 years later. The lake house was bustling. Tables were set up on the lawn covered in white linens and simple wildflowers. Not Belgian roses. Just wildflowers from the garden. Guests were arriving. My friends from the catering company. Julian's team. My parents looking older and humbler sitting quietly in the back row. And Ryan. He was there with a woman who looked kind and wore glasses. He waved at me a genuine happy wave. I stood at the altar, a simple wooden arch we had built ourselves. I wasn't wearing a designer gown. I was wearing my grandmother's dress altered to fit clean and beautiful. Julian stood waiting for me. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like the man who had pulled me out of the darkness. Ready, he whispered as I took his hands. Ready, I said. The officiant began to speak, but I tuned him out for a second. I looked out at the water glistening in the sun. I felt the breeze on my face. I thought about the girl in the pantry, the girl who thought her life was over, the girl who was afraid of the dark. I squeezed Julian's hand. I wasn't that girl anymore. I was Elena Vance. I was the owner of my own story. And as I said, I knew that the best revenge wasn't destroying my sister. It wasn't humiliating my ex. It wasn't even getting the money. The best revenge was standing here in the sun completely and utterly happy. Maybe this story touched something inside you, a feeling of being trapped, or the liberating power of the truth. We often think that winning means defeating our enemies, but Elena teaches us that winning really means building a life where your enemies no longer matter. She didn't let the pantry define her. She used the darkness to find her light. She didn't let the betrayal harden her heart. She used it to find a love that was real and safe. And let's not forget the power of receipts. In a world of gaslighting and manipulation, sometimes the most radical act of self-love is simply documenting the truth. Elena didn't need to scream. She just needed to press play. Victoria's letter from prison is a haunting reminder that envy is a prison of its own making. She had everything on the outside, but she was starving on the inside. It's a tragedy, really. But it's not Elena's tragedy to fix. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever had to crawl through a ventilation duct metaphorically or literally to get your voice back, share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever found peace after a betrayal? Or maybe you just love a good garden wedding. And please tell me where you're watching from, whether it's a lake house in Vermont or a high-rise in Tokyo. I read every comment, and knowing you're out there listening gives me the inspiration to find and tell more stories of resilience, justice, and the quiet victory of happiness. Thank you for spending your time with me today. Remember, the truth always wins, and happiness is the best revenge. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.